After not helping me with my studies, my parents bought my sister a $40,000 car, and then lent money for her wedding when I was successful. Growing up, I thought my parents were fair. Although they weren't rich, they provided for us. At least, I thought so. But everything changed when I turned 18, and said I wanted to go to med school. I remember showing them the acceptance letter at the kitchen table, nervous and excited. I entered. I held the letter like my golden ticket and said, "I just need tuition assistance. I'll repay you, swear." They did not smile. Mom looked at my sister, who was scrolling on her phone like she didn't care, as Dad sighed. Dad said, "Son, we can't help. Budget is tight." Confused. Though it was hard, they always managed. Tight. I requested, "Last year you helped Sarah pay for college." Mom looked at me. Discussion over. Her usual face. "Your sister needed aid. We also saved for other expenses." Sarah intervened before I could argue. "It's not like med school is required. You could do IT or business cheaper." That's stupid. I didn't request luxury. I wanted a chance. Later that night, I discovered those other costs. Sarah got a new car from Dad. Not some used junker. It was shiny, expensive, and outside their budget. I realized they had money then. Not worth the investment, they said. Furious, but what could I do? I was clearly not involved in their decision. That night, I stared at my acceptance letter, wondering if it was worth it. How could I pay for medical school without my parents' support? The next day, I decided, without their help, I'd help myself. I applied for any pay job. A local construction company hired me as a builder. It wasn't glamorous or what I wanted, but it paid for community college while I saved for med school. My first day at work was brutal. I was unaccustomed to carrying heavy bricks, mixing cement, and working in the heat. My hands were blistered after the shift, and I couldn't move the next morning. I didn't gripe. I couldn't. I was motivated by every pain and bruise. I was building a future, not just houses. My parents and Sarah pretended nothing was wrong. Dad would brag to the neighbors about Sarah's new car. And Mom kept asking me when I'd start a career. I wanted to scream, "What am I doing?" But I kept quiet. I knew they wouldn't understand and didn't need them to. I needed to persevere. Days became weeks, then months. My routine was hell. Wake up at 5 a.m., work a 10-hour shift at a construction site, then attend community college night classes. I was exhausted but kept going. I wanted to go to med school no matter what. The older guys at work teased me. "What's a kid like you doing here? Don't you belong in college?" They laughed as I wiped sweat from my face. Working my way there. I told them, which usually quieted them. Work wasn't the only challenge. Going home every night, and seeing Sarah live her best life. She showed off her new car in the driveway, complained about her boring weekends, and said her classes were easy. I broke my back to pay for one semester. My parents didn't concern themselves. They never asked how I was or if I needed help. Only when Dad said, "At least you're learning the value of hard work," did they mention my job. Hard work. I wanted to yell. I was drowning while they served Sarah everything on a silver platter. I bit my tongue. I knew arguing wouldn't help. Proving them wrong was my only option. After a year of non-stop work, I saved enough to transfer to a better college. Not med school yet, but closer. Receiving the acceptance email will always be memorable. My phone buzzed in my tiny apartment as I sat exhausted from a long day. "Congrats," it said. "You got into pre-med." I sat, staring at the screen. I finally felt like all the sleepless nights and long hours were worth it. Who should I call to tell them? My parents didn't care, and Sarah might sarcastically comment on my late arrival. I kept it quiet and celebrated alone. I arrived at work with more energy the next day. I didn't care when the foreman yelled at me for being slow. Finally, I left. My parents were unimpressed when I told them about the acceptance. Mom said, barely looking up from her magazine, "That's good." Dad advised, "Just keep working. You don't want debt." Sarah didn't speak. She took selfies in her new designer outfit too much. I didn't expect a party, but some enthusiasm would have been nice. It didn't bother me much. I'd made it this far without their help, so I didn't need it now. Entering pre-med was just the beginning of new challenges. Managing work and school was harder than expected. I'd leave the dirt-covered construction site and go to class, sometimes skipping meals to finish assignments. There were times I considered quitting, like when my car broke down and I had to walk 3 miles in the rain to class. Sometimes I got sick but couldn't miss work to pay for textbooks. My parents? I wasn't asked how I was. They only called when needed. "Can you send us grocery money?" Mom once asked like I was rich. I barely have enough for myself. Instead, I sent what I could. I heard from them again a few months later when Dad needed truck repair help. Sarah lived in her own world. She posted photos of her vacations, fancy dinners, and new clothes while I ate instant noodles in my tiny apartment. She never asked how I was or noticed my struggles. I tried to tell my mom how hard things were. She stopped me mid-sentence. "You chose this path," she said. Smarter choices made Sarah's life easier. Smarter choices? Like spending their money and being unemployed? I wanted to scream but didn't. I resumed studying after hanging up the phone. My parents called more often but followed the same pattern. They started with small talk to show they cared, but they got to the point quickly. "Needed something. Your dad's truck broke down again," Mom said on one call. "Can you send money for repairs?" Finals were underway and I hadn't slept in 2 days. I was broke, exhausted, and hardly functioning. "Mom, I don't have any extra cash." Her tone shifted immediately. "You can't expect us to handle everything alone," she snapped. "Your sister's work prevents her from helping." That tipped me over. Was Sarah too busy? Busy with what? Photos of her new shoes? Booking spa visits? After that, I avoided their calls. Every phone call reminded me that I was only useful when they needed something. Meanwhile, school pressure increased. I failed a major exam due to inattention. I fell behind on assignments and cut work hours to catch up. That meant even less money, and I was barely surviving. I stared at my bills in my apartment one night, wondering if I could continue. It felt like everyone was against me. However, I remembered why I started this journey. Not for my parents or Sarah. I did it for myself. I worked harder than ever after that realization. I stopped returning parental calls. Their constant demands took too much time and energy, especially since I knew they didn't care about me. I focused on my studies, controllable. I studied, read textbooks, and practiced exams in the library every spare moment. Slowly I caught up. I felt like I was progressing for the first time in years as my grades improved. Life had other ideas. I slipped while carrying a heavy beam at work and twisted my ankle badly. Walked poorly for weeks, let alone worked. That month, my paycheck barely covered rent, so I had to use my savings. I tried to get my parents' sympathy by calling them, but they were indifferent. Mom said, "Oh, that's too bad," without concern. "Your sister may buy a new car. She requested your assistance in finding a good deal." I was shocked. Hear what I said? "I can't walk. You're talking about Sarah's car? We assumed you'd know more about those things," she said dismissively. The end. I hung up and didn't call for months. My parents' months of silence were soothing. Now I could focus on myself without their constant calls and demands. After my ankle healed, I worked and saved enough to finish pre-med and apply to med school. Receiving my acceptance letter was surreal. I finally followed my childhood dream after years of struggle. Sitting alone in my tiny apartment, I read the letter several times, absorbing the reality. I delayed telling my parents. The point? They'd only return it to Sarah or request something. Instead, I jumped into medical school. Though it was harder than expected, I didn't care. I wouldn't stop now that I'd come this far. The long hours, sleepless nights, and constant pressure were worth it, because I was building something for myself. I occasionally heard from Sarah on social media. Her carefree life included posting photos of vacations, fancy dinners, and endless shopping sprees. Though I resented her, I knew she'd never been pushed. Why change when Mom and Dad always gave her everything? My parents would stop calling. It hurt at first, but I realized I didn't miss their calls. I didn't miss guilt trips or Sarah comparisons. Just once I felt free. I hadn't heard from my parents in months. I assumed they were either too busy with Sarah or had moved on. I got a call one night. It was Mom. I initially thought something serious had happened. Why else would she call now? I picked up and she sounded unusually happy. One. How are you? We miss you. Not buying it. Mom didn't call to chat. What's happening? I requested. She hesitated, then said, Sarah's wedding is coming up, and things are tight financially. Since you're doing well, we thought you could help. I was stunned for a moment. The first time they call me after years of struggling is to ask for money for Sarah's wedding. You're serious? I said. You wouldn't help me pay for school, so now you want me to pay for her wedding? Mom sighed like I was difficult. Not like that. Today is your sister's big day, and you're successful. We just need some aid. I lost control. You kidding me? After years of hard work. No one helped me, especially not you. Now you want me to give you money? No way. Her tone changed immediately. I didn't realize you were selfish. She snapped. The end. I hung up. I was too tired to argue. Mom wasn't heard from after that call. I was fine with that. I didn't need the stress or to keep arguing why I couldn't help. 2 weeks later, Sarah contacted me. Brief and to the point. Can you consider helping? This matters to me. I didn't reply. Was I supposed to say that her important day didn't matter to me after years of being ignored? It went to voicemail when Mom called again a few days later. Her guilt-tripping message about family and helping my sister was exactly what I expected. I was there for family. I worked hard for their support, approval, and anything else for years. This was never enough. Sarah was always first. I contemplated everything in my apartment one night. Part of me wanted to forgive them and move on. However, the bigger part of me was tired of always compromising. They hadn't earned my help, so I wouldn't help them. I answered when Mom called again the next day. Mom, I told you. I won't assist with the wedding. I said before she started. You're cold. She replied. Our family. Don't you care? Family? I said. What was family when I needed aid? You funded Sarah's car in college, but not me. You want me to save you? No. Mom didn't say much after that. She sighed and hung up. A few days later, Sarah called. I almost didn't answer, but I decided to face it rather than ignore it. She began, her voice too sweet. Mom told me you're not helping with the wedding. What's happening? Her tone, like this was a minor misunderstanding, was unbelievable. What's happening? I repeated. Are you serious? Sarah, you've always had everything. Everything. When no one helped me. You expect me to help with your big day? She huffed like she was being bothered. I know you had it hard, but I did too. My wedding okay? Not just for me, but the family. Bitter laughter. The family? You mean the family that didn't care when I worked 12-hour shifts to pay for classes? The same family that bought you a car while I couldn't afford bus fare? Spare me, Sarah. Defense ensued. The car wasn't requested. Perhaps things would have been different if you weren't always bitter. The end. Unbelievable you. I said. Nothing in your life has been your responsibility. This conversation is over. The call ended, and I turned off my phone for the day. After our argument, Sarah and my parents stopped talking. Maybe they'd gotten the message. But part of me knew it was still going. Mom visited my apartment one day. I was surprised to see her crying when I opened the door. Can we talk? She asked. I let her in, but I wouldn't let her guilt me again. She sat on the couch and began immediately. Although imperfect, your sister is still your sister. Family should support each other. Leaning against the wall, I crossed my arms. Mom, I've always supported myself. Where was this family support when I needed it? I'd heard these excuses a million times. We tried our best. Back then. Things were tight. Stop, I interrupted. Your efforts were poor. You chose. You helped Sarah and left me to figure it out. And I did. Please don't ask for favors years later like nothing happened. Her face fell, and I thought she maybe understood. But she said, I don't understand how you can abandon your sister. I was shocked. I won't ignore her. Setting boundaries. Differences exist. Really, someone in this family should do it. She left soon after. I was relieved and angry when she left. Relief that I persisted, anger that she didn't understand. After that visit, Mom, Sarah, And others didn't contact me for weeks. Silence was loud, but I didn't mind. Working, being patient, and building my life were my priorities. Sarah once texted me. It was a photo from her lavish wedding, complete with smiling faces, a fancy venue, and a dress that cost more than my first car. Caption: wish you were there. I still love you. I remained silent. I observed it for a while. It reminded me of how little they understood me, not guilt. A few weeks later, I was called again. Dad this time. I almost ignored it but picked up. He said, unusually quietly, "Hey, I wish it hadn't happened this way. We didn't mean to devalue you." I anticipated a but. Naturally there was. "We did what we thought was best because your sister needed us." I sighed. I don't hate Dad, Mom, or Sarah. I need space. I worked hard to get here, so I can't deny the past. After some silence, he said, "I get it. I actually do. I wish we could be close again." "It may take time," I said. My call ended with a strange sense of closure. My need for their approval ended for the first time. I succeeded alone, which was enough.